What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. I am your host, Todd Rosales, and you notice I'm not sitting in my office today. I want to welcome my guest, so this way he's not just sitting there awkwardly while I talk about him. Please, well, I don't know your official title, but the head of Florida for Green Dragon.
Yes, I'm the market leader.
Market leader, Tom Grebenstein. Tom, thanks for joining us again.
Pleasure to see you.
Absolutely. By the way, I love this dispensary. It is in my old stomping grounds. I used to live out here. And I've told you this before, and I've probably told you this story on the podcast before many, many times, but I have such an affinity for Green Dragon because it is the first legal dispensary I ever went to, the Breckenridge location. Awesome. So that's also a half true story. So a buddy of mine, we go out to Colorado, first time in 2015 or 16, must have been 16. First time, like, we're all excited. We're renting a house in Breck, legal week. We get almost to Breckenridge, and we stopped at a little bullshit dispensary in Frisco. This was literally, you walk in, it was one counter, nothing in the display.
Apothecary style.
Yeah, some guy just like, they literally, you can tell they handle their joints in the backyard, in the back of the pre-rolls. And we were so excited to just buy it. And we burned through, we thought we bought enough weed for the whole trip. We burned through that in like day one. And we ended up going to Green Dragon. So it was the first proper dispensary I went to where I walk in, beautiful display cases with edibles and flour. They had the jars of the flour. In the middle of the flour, they had coffee beans so you can clear your nose as you're smelling different cannabis. And to me, that was the experience that got me hooked and got me into the cannabis industry. So when I found out that Green Dragon was coming to Florida, the location that you guys had on Compass, I saw that. And I think I drove by that 10 times before it opened. And like 3 or 4 of those times, I pulled under the door to see if it was open. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah, and well, unfortunately, there's also things like coffee being clear in the palate and things like that in Colorado. That, unfortunately, in Florida environment, we can't do. But we're doing our best to reduce, the experience from Colorado with Green Dragon and California with Eaze, and bring that experience to Florida.
No, and I think that's what's needed. I think the state is really, it's weird. And I know we're going to talk about the details of the state. Probably should kind of talk about what we're going to talk about before we start recording. But, Florida is kind of like, it's confused right now. It is a medical state by law. And I know I can say certain things you may not be able to say. It is a medical state by law, but it is, to me, it's a recreational state that is grading as a medical state. Because there are folks like myself, I enjoy smoking weed, and I got my medical card, so I could buy it legally. Luckily, I have the parameters they qualify me for it. But I just feel better being able to walk into a store like this and purchase it over the counter, knowing that it's been tested. And we can talk about testing things and all that, but it just makes me feel better. But it is still a recreation, right? I'm buying the same flower and everything else, and I feel like it's in a weird time where like everybody wants to move towards that recreation because they're knowing that the state is holding them tight on the medical side.
Yeah, well, I think that you've got 860,000 registered patients now in Florida, and I think that a larger percentage are coming from the school than you are, as opposed to those who are strictly using cannabis as a medicine cabinet. Is cannabis my medicine cabinet? Absolutely, it's why us enjoy sitting down on a Saturday night with something that is a little different from what I use for my medical treatment. Absolutely. I think that what we're able to bring to the table here through Green Dragon is a selection of product lines that fits both sides. We have, some very clinical items. We have some others that are a little bit more.
I think that's the perfect world. And I think at some point, maybe not here so much, just because of the way that it works, right? And, I don't know, you would know better than I do because it's your job, but like maybe some stores like closer to Central Florida and like the villages, it's more medical based down. Closer to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, more rec-based and more flower-based products. But I think the perfect world includes both. And I think that's why everyone thinks we're so crazy in the cannabis world, is because when people ask us, what do you compare cannabis to or what does it do? And we say, kind of does everything. They're like, you're crazy. It's like, well, no, because like, you're right. There are times where I wake up on certain days, maybe I'm super stressed with just life in general. Obviously, if you work in this industry, that's what we all go through. But like, it gives me the ability, and I won't smoke a giant joint or anything else, but I'll take a couple hits of the joint. And it allows me to just block out the things that are keeping me from focusing on the things I need to do to be successful so those other things go away permanently. So it kind of gives me that temporary superpower. But then again, come Saturday night, I'm going down to the Athena Improv to go see one of my favorite comedians. You know, I'm smoking a gram joint to the face, so I'm laughing my ass off in that situation. So I use it in both directions.
So that amount of self-care and relaxation is just as important for your overall mental state and healthcare as the tincture that, you might be using for pain relief.
I would probably like tinctures so much more than I think I do, just because like they're quick acting, they're very easy to use, but for some reason it's droppers.
It does have that thing. I like them for, the duration out. So, I know that I can take an RSO tincture and have a good 8-9 hours for a good long sleep.
We'll get into the stuff that doesn't involve me personally, but it was a very self-centered show. I am so set in my ways of just smoking joints. Like, I just recently got into using concentrates because someone had gifted me a Dr. Dabber. And I was very anti-dabbing before that. I mean, honestly, I have a good friend of mine, he's a call connoisseur or whatever he is, and he set up the whole experience for me, the glass and the torch and everything, and he did it to the point where it's like, just take a hit of this. And I still felt like a crackhead just because of the involvement of the torch. So,
yeah, I can see that. I do enjoy that. An E-rig like a Puffco myself, so it's a little bit more refined.
He gifted me that Dr. Dabber, and then I was luckily gifted some concentrate, and I started calling them dad dabs because I have kids, as a lot of us do, and there are certain mornings, Saturday mornings, where I was stressed up. I don't have the time or the ability to go away from them and smoke a joint, so I can go in my office and put a little bit of concentrate in there, light it up electronically, take one rip, and feel great. And then I'm on the floor playing Legos or playing with Barbies or whatever I do, right?
Yeah.
So I started calling them dad dabs. And to my friends that I've talked about concentrates to, and I'm like, they're crazy. Like, I figured out how to use them. And yeah, I recommend it for parents, to be honest now.
I agree. It took me a long time to really understand, because to me, smoking was always kind of a wind down period, right?
Yeah.
That's where I get my little bit of time to sit there and talk to my wife and I decompress and probably talk too long over the passing of the joint back to her or whatnot. But so I was always kind of reticent towards concentrates myself as a result of that, because I didn't want to get as much THC on board that quickly. And obviously, over time that changes. Quite enjoying the move over to concentrates myself, especially watching some new live video shows that are going over very well.
Very cool. So let's get into Green Dragon right now, because we talk about weed use cases. I'm sure we'll circle back to it. You guys are all over the state of Florida. You've got a very big concentration here. I would feel like this is the second coming of Green Dragon right now, because you've got your geographical footprint, and I feel like now you're really starting to dial in and grow.
I think that's accurate. We launched very, very fast. I mean, at a speed that was astonishing from the outside. It was not with the company.
Do you think that because historically the company was really a retail expert?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, if you look at the model that was successful has been successful, as you alluded to in Colorado, is very much one of convenience and retail and providing a great product selection. And we tried to launch that in that same method here in Florida without enough cultivation capacity behind it to make it a truly feasible model. Now, the team launched 36 dispensaries in 20 months, which is unreal. Just unreal. But unfortunately, we started out with a leased grow that was a mixed light grow. We really didn't have control over the environmentals, whatnot. So the cannabis that came out of it was not good. Now we've transitioned into our full indoor grow at Black Cat. We're actually doubling capacity there very shortly. Really got the rooms dialed in, and the flower that's coming out of those rooms now is exceptional. So we feel that we've got, as you said, the second coming. We've got the retail footprint. We're just about there with the with product selection and with the cultivation footprint, and we're really ready to show Florida that we've got the capability to service the patient population.
Florida is such an interesting case, right? Because when everyone first started, no one was really doing true indoor, right? There's a lot of hoop houses out here, like greenhouses. People were taking advantage of the land. And I think, there's a lot of speed to market because everything was selling. right? The original 800 of the 800,000 or so patients we have, there was a lot of senior citizens. And then originally smokable flower wasn't even a product that you could sell.
Yeah.
So I feel like this market was set up specifically for extraction. And then all of a sudden smokable flower passed. And it's like, well, wait a second. Well, granted, now back in the 80s and 90s, this was good weed. But by today's standard, unfortunately,
Not real.
it's not anymore. That's the thing. Like, all of a sudden, you go back to like 1975 and you said this is 16% THC. So I'm like, oh shit, like, But now it's like
the old G13. That was 13% THC. It must be incredible.
See, this is the shit that I miss. Like, so I didn't start getting into weed till I was like 20 or 21, 19, really. So that was, 2006 to 2008. I miss all the history and the old stuff. Like, man, I don't know how anybody feels about it, but like a buddy of mine like hit me up and he's talking about this guy, Miami Mango. And Mango literally was a friend of mine. And I knew this guy and I had been at parties with him, but I didn't know the history around it or everything else. So it's really cool to see that. But this state was set up really for extraction, and you guys inheriting someone who probably at the time when you got the license, they were thinking extraction. They weren't thinking long term. And now all of a sudden you have all these phenomenal retail stores, but the kitchen didn't catch up yet.
Well, I think, and the kitchens are catching up. There's a lot of great competition here in the state, but I think that there's also, along with that, what's really a lot of folks aren't paying attention to is stratification of the patient base, right? And, as you said, 500 or 860,000 patients, something of that nature. There's 25% of that, maybe 30%, that is the cannabis culture aficionado, that enjoys standing in Jungle Boys and looking at skateboard decks or going to,
My computer so rudely cut you off in the middle of talking about what the patient population of Florida looks like.
Yes. So, as I'm saying, I think there's a fair number of those folks, 25, 30%, who really are culture focused and they want that more intense dispensary experience. On the flip side, the vast majority of folks in this market are already paying, $400 to $600 a year just to participate in the community between, their recs, renewals, state fees, the card, everything. Instead, what they're really focused on is having an effective product, a high quality product at an affordable price that they can get convenient to their homes and not have to wait an hour in a waiting room to get it.
Yeah.
And it's really that simple. And that's what the niche that Green Dragon has fit in other markets. And we just didn't bring that message to Florida when we launched, even though our market position perfectly suits the need in Florida.
Yeah. The Florida market is interesting in that sense because I don't know, I compare, I would like to think in most parts of the country that are not called California, I represent the average consumer. I smoke a good amount of weed, a joint a day at least. I'm professional. I happen to be in the industry, but most of my friends that I grew up smoking with are similar smoking habits to me. They just don't work in the industry, so they're not as in tune into what's good, what's not good, and everything else. The reason I buy the stuff I do is because I have the inside baseball route, right? Whereas most of my friends will go down the street to True Leaf because it's convenient, right? So where I live, we have, and it's recently expanded, we have a Certera, True Leaf, a Sanctuary, a Columbia Care, and then not too far is an Air. So, I have a lot of friends, like, I'll be the one to say it. I don't really shop at those places. No, they all have some good stuff there. Maybe I'll get some Connector Alien Labs from True Leaf, but I don't really shop there. I tend to try to go to Jungle Boys. I'll get delivery from the Flowery because I'm not driving to fucking North Miami. But the only reason that I feel confident, the only reason that I'm willing to take that trip is because I have the insider information of what people are putting out, and the average consumer in Florida doesn't. Now, I believe that True Leaf, the reason that they have such a dominant market share is because outside of your Jacksonville's, Orlando's, Tampa's, Miami's, Fort Lauderdale's, sometimes they're the only game in town.
They've done a very good job at filling in what I think of as the grout between the tiles, and they have that, they've got a great team that selects locations based on minimal market penetration, but with a population that'll support the store. So,
but nobody.
I don't shop there myself, but I can certainly understand why a ton
So
of folks do.
this is a very simple thought, and it's nothing against them. This very simple thought, but it being outside the industry, I don't think anyone thinks this, is being able to cultivate that much flower to be able to support the sales in all of it. I mean, Truly right now sells 50-60% of all the flower in the state of Florida. The ability to cultivate that much flower on a scale that large consistently has never been fucking done before in the history of weed. Like maybe a cartel somewhere, but they're not caring about quality.
Or the folks who've tried to do it at that type of scale, particularly in the Canadian market,
Yeah.
frequently ended up with ghost canopy because they're not producing it.
So at the end of the day, like, you know, and nothing against them, they're just really trying to accomplish one of the hardest things that has never been done before. And for that, I think quality suffers a lot. Like I always make this joke. Everything that is widespread at some point had to be the best. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the opportunity to get there. Like at some point, Jack Daniels had to be the best whiskey. At some point, Outback probably had great steaks, right? But it gets to a point where it gets homogenized and you have to lower costs and the quality suffers. Like I also joke, you go to Disney World and the food has gotten better, but I go, the test kitchen at Disney must be some of the best food I've ever had because the concept of what they put out at Disney is great. But by the time you put out a pretzel bread egg sandwich and you need, you know, 200,000 pretzel rolls over the course of 2 days, you're not buying the artisan pretzel bread from the bakery down the street. You're buying it from Cisco in bulk, and then it's traveling and sitting. So I say that to say with weed, like there is a science to me of growing your cultivation, scaling out your cultivation with your retail to be able to support that, because you are almost shooting yourself in the foot. So
well, and I think there's an equivalency there that the answer to both circumstances is communication with the end user, with the patient, you know, and helping them to understand, okay, I may be putting out 3 or 4 different brands of flower from the same grow. Why are they priced differently? Well, because okay, this stuff is going to end up being hand trimmed and hand bottled. Well, that's a lot more labor. So that's going to come at a higher price point. There's going to be other things that are going to be machine trimmed, machine packaged. Those are going to be far more affordable because not as much human labor has gone into putting it out there. But we're putting the same amount of care into growing every flower. It's just a question of the processing between plant and end user, how much human interaction is involved there, and how should that influence price point. And I think that that's a great conversation to have with the patients so that they understand, okay, I'm willing to deal with, you know, a small bud because I can get more of that for my money. And I understand why it is that the dispensary is charging me this price as opposed to another.
It is interesting, right? Because we talk about in the cannabis industry, the number one thing we always say is consumers need to be educated more. They need to be educated. They need to be educated. But when we go to alcohol or just booze in general, like nobody's educated on alcohol. Like you don't know why you buy a certain vodka over another vodka or a whiskey over another whiskey. I think maybe whiskey, because of the flavor and like the small batches, is a little bit different. But like you look at vodka, and I think a lot of us like Tito's, and it's, you know, quintuple distilled and everything. I don't know what the fucking quintuple distilled means in reality. Like, I don't ever see like quintuple distilled on Tito's, and then all of a sudden a new vodka comes out and they're whatever 5 times distilled is. I'm like, oh, that must be better. I'm going to go with Tito's because I know it has a good reputation and I like the taste of it. And it's weird, like with cannabis, we don't let people do that.
Right.
And it is so unique to me, this industry. Like it is, we try to be so different. I feel like at the end of the day, we're going to end up being just like everybody else.
Well, I think at least in the infancy of the industry, again, it's an interesting opposite, as you said, to that of alcohol, where in cannabis, people are driven by positive experiences to influence their purchasing habits, whereas generally with alcohol, it's a negative experience. Like I'm never drinking that vodka again because, oh man, I was hurting so bad the next day. But it's which direction are their purchasing behavior?
It's funny. There's a comedian I like a lot, Jeff Dye, and he has a famous line because he came down to a cannabis show that a couple of my friends put on, and he goes, you know, the thing I love about weed people is like, I tell weed it doesn't work for me. They're like, oh, you just haven't found the right strain. And then he talks about drinking, and he's like, oh, he's like, when someone gets really fucked up on booze, you don't say, oh, you're just drinking the wrong booze. But that is true. There are so many people. It's like, I can't drink tequila anymore. I can't drink whiskey anymore. I can't drink rum anymore just because that's what I drank in high school and college. Like it doesn't work for me. So he's wrong. But But I love this. And the one thing that confuses me, we talk about people going down the street and going off of convenience, is and you guys do this in California, great. When does delivery kick up here? Because I have, again, my friends, and maybe they're just very stuck in their way. I always tell them, guys, there are a couple places you can order delivery. You're going to get a better product. They have a ridiculous delivery window of fucking 12 hours, but they will get you better weed. So
I think for us, the big thing there is that we want to be able to mimic the Eaze delivery experience in California when we bring it to Green Dragon here in Florida, which is much more like a DoorDash type experience where it's on demand, it's delivered exact. In fact, in California, we have more difficulty with scheduled delivery than we do with on-demand delivery.
Huh.
And that's really a software and ingestion issue and things like that. But, I think that the answer to your question is, once we can find a balance between that rapid on-demand delivery and the compliance environment of the Florida OMMU regulatory schema, then we'll be in a position where we can do that. And it really comes down to us being able to hold inventory in our delivery vehicles during shift. Obviously, it wouldn't be leaving it anywhere overnight or anything like that, but being able to hold inventory in the vehicles during shift will give us that on-demand experience. And I do think that with
Florida doesn't allow that right now.
they
right?
don't, no, they don't. But with adult use, I think we'll see that change.
Interesting. Do you think we'll see adult use in this next election cycle?
I sincerely hope so. I think that, if you look at the vote for medical use being approved at a 72% margin, I think that shows that there's enough voter support for a referendum. It's just a question of, can we all get on the same page about how that should be rolled out? And if we can't, will that keep people from voting for the next step in the solution?
So the thing I always thought about this is our governor DeSantis one time came out and said that the cannabis companies are not paying enough money and they should pay more of the share, right? They in Florida came and they completely raised the price of holding a license and everything else. But my thought, and I could be wrong, is if you added up the medical fees that you get from the patients with the cards, the $75 a couple times a year, whatever it is, obviously, most of the money you're paying is actually going to the doctor, not the state. And then you take the fees for the licenses and everything else, and you wiped all that away, and you just tax the $1.4 billion in revenue that 800,000 people are spending and make it adult use. The number that our local or state government would make off cannabis would be exponentially larger than what they're making now.
I agree. I think that has to come in concert with a federal descheduling that would allow us to not be subject to 280E, so that there is a piece of the pie that we can kind of take away from the government, from one government entity being the Fed, and give it to another government entity in the state. But that could bring a lot of good to the state, and there certainly are enough people here who are interested in adult use cannabis
That's the crazy thing to me, though. We're the number 4 state in the country, or 5, whatever it is this year, around 1.4 billion. And we literally only have 860,000 people who can legally buy cannabis. We are a state of 30 million people plus the number with tourism.
Well, that's the thing, is it gives you another method to harvest revenue from inbound tourists, right? And that's a great thing for the Florida consumer, especially if we're able to keep a modicum of the medical program in place. And I realize that over many years that's not feasible, but over a transitionary period where taxation of adult use is also helping to support the clinically fragile, I think that's a win for everybody.
I agree with that. I believe this, and that's the thing, that's where I get selfish. I do believe that all states really do continue to need a strong medical market. Like when we look at what cannabis actually is, and I've done this 100 times, is you have, recreational adult use, you have medical, and then there's like true medical where you're actually it's not like, hey, smoke this joint, you're going to feel better. It's what strains are we looking at? What is the terpene profile? What does this actually do for somebody? What is the best delivery mechanism for them? Like that to me is still very, very important. I'm just selfish because I'm not there yet. And then beyond that, you have CBD and you have like the nutraceutical side of it with the alternative cannabinoids that are not just fake weed and shit being sprayed on hemp. And then you have industrial hemp. So there is this giant industry that I feel like we only focus on like this little part over here, like growing flower and smoking it. we're extracting it, right? You know, so the one thing that I think is cool with you guys, like I look around and I see the different form factors and the tinctures and everything else, like you got to stay, there needs to be the medical options for a lot of people.
There does, and there needs to be, you know, those methods of ingestion that people who are in any sort of medical circumstance are being comfortable with. It
Yeah.
be not smoking or concentrates, but the other extract products. And by the way, that constantly evolves. We don't, we're always researching new products. There's always new things being created by very creative people around the country that we're going to take those methodologies and bring them here to our grow.
It's going back to being selfish. I want infused pre-rolls.
Yeah, you know, it's impossible to dispense right now, but if we could get it under adult use, I think that would be a great.
So
Such a huge market segment in the West right now.
So as you guys are turning things around, you're investing in this new grow, it's getting up and running. How do you start looking at the products that you put into market, from pheno hunting to strain selection to different delivery mechanisms? Like, how do you really curate an experience that people are going to want to enjoy?
It's a great question, and one that is really not easy to answer because it involves,
Of course not.
being present. Yeah. It involves, you know, us having bud tenders who are really knowledgeable, and have enough education to interpret what's being received from the patient population and get that to us. It also involves us as an executive team being in the stores more often, seeing the experience of the patient, listening to what the gaps in need are. You know, as often it's a question of duration of efficacy versus rapidity of onset that somebody needs, and we have to find a way to blend those things to get to the right clinical outcomes. So we are constantly evolving our pheno hunting. I mean, any given day we're putting, you know, 15 to 20 new strains into rotation per month, just to try and see what works and what doesn't, especially in a new environment that we've got tuned in, but as we expand it, there's the opportunity to see what else can we do with the genetic profile in there. And then, you know, keeping our finger on the pulse of what's really selling well in more mature markets. You know, being in Michigan, Colorado, and California gives us the ability to kind of anticipate what's going to be popular here. Although it's really interesting is we have a much different view on seasonality here in Florida
We
than
don't have seasons.
Yes.
It's fucking November 27th and it's like 92 outside.
I know. But hey, you know, one of the things like we need to get into production now is sativa topicals to deal with sunburn in the spring, right? As everybody forgets, they
You
start
can get
going
sunburned
back out.
today.
Yeah, right.
You know, the funny thing about that is, so I'm a sativa guy. I love sativas, hazes, you know, diesels, all that. And to be honest, and a lot of places now, more recently, I'm starting to see them more, but a lot of places, they were very dessert heavy for a while, and they were very, very just heavy, high testing indicas. And like, I understand that the general masses want that, but I feel like it's interesting to curate this menu. I'm going to say something about the flowery because they know I love them, they know I buy their products, but my biggest issue with them is I find a strain I like and then it fucking goes away. And I see that in a lot of places around here. Grow Healthy has done a good job. They have a strawberry haze I like, and it's consistent. It's there. I can rely on it. It is my old friend. If ever I need a haze, I can go and I can grab it. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's okay. But like a place like the Flowery and some of these more culturally relevant dispensaries, like they're rotating through shit, and they have all these different hype strains, and you know, good for them. They have like 9 or 10 different brands that they have to support. But as someone who they had a Jack Herer for a while, they had a strawberry sour diesel that I like, they had a super booth that I liked, and it's just all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second, I can't get that again. Like that's what I liked from you guys, and that actually upsets me a lot.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see, like, when do people settle in? Like, is that a better method? Because I've never been on the retail side of things. Is that a better methodology that keeps people coming that just want to try new stuff? Or I feel like a lot of people want a handful of strains that are like mainstays and then others that are rotating.
You do, and from a business standpoint, also you need to have, you know, predictable yielders that are in the grow so that you can ensure that your extract product base, as you mentioned, being such an extract heavy state, always has something to feed the fire there. And Yeah, I mean, the state really did start out kind of sativa heavy, then drift into the indicas. I think that was really driven more by growing conditions.
Yeah.
That you
A
know, people
lot
got
of gelato.
and all those
It's
sativas
like
are
fucking,
such
it's
long
like
flower
Italy here.
cycles. It's yeah. Um, but yeah, and then there's that the sweet versus savory kind of cyclic nature, right? And I think we're at the top of the peak right now with
Yeah.
the candies and the cereals and the cakes and everything, and we'll start to see a swing more towards the diesely dank.
You're seeing a lot of people switch towards gas and earthy and everything else. And the only thing that bothers me is that like everyone's doing it. I would love for like one group to be like, you know what, maybe it is the flower. We are the house of gelato. We are gonna be the Italian ice cream shop. You guys can go, but I guess you got to follow trends too. I'm confused who's setting these stupid
Well,
trends.
I think the next step for, at least from my perspective, is also going to be a shift towards nostalgia away from
Yes.
cutting edge, seeing some of the old school genetics that we haven't seen in
I mean, like Blue Dream.
like Blue Dream, like G13 or Lemon G13 or I-95, or even going all the way back to like an Alaska Thunderfuck or something like that.
That's the name I
And
heard.
bringing,
Wow.
I know, right? The stuff that when we were kids, you'd find an old copy of High Times and they'd be talking about it. I think that some of those genetics having caught up to modern cultivation, there will be an opportunity to, restore some of those to the
How do you catch up those genetics in modern cultivation? Do you have to cross them with something newer, or?
I think if you can find a similar terp profile and flavonoid profile that's stable and is newer, that's one option. The other option is to go forward with back crossing and try to stabilize the genetic at that point, and then really work your nutrient and watering blends to try and then bring those yields up to kind of modern cultivation standards. Because if you think about it, those things back in the day, they were probably yielding 35, 40 grams per square foot, or now 65, 70 is kind of a minimum industry standard.
Yeah. It's I mean, I like that. I when I find a solid Blue Dream, it is one of the best experiences ever. And it's funny, I drifted away from that shit. I have this weird thing, like I've never seen a episode of Game of Thrones because everybody loved it. Everyone told me that I had to watch it. For some reason, I'm just like, nah, I'm good. So all of a sudden, Blue Dream is like, this one most popular sativa, everybody knows and loves it. It becomes so like, oh, of course you like Blue Dream. You must not know anything about weed. So I drifted away from it. But at the end of the day, it made me very happy.
You know what? I think it's out in California, for example, Kiva brought back Blue Dream and their Lost Farm line with kind of some other old school lost genetics. And you're right. You're right. It's as soon as it popped back up onto the radar, I was like, I forgot about this.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool. Yeah.
Because I've been going anything after that has a super silver haze lineage is really I've been chasing down a lot lately.
Any of the stuff that kind of gives me the high school giggles,
I missed it. I didn't smoke in high school. Oh, maybe it was for the better. I don't know. We'll see. It took me a while. It's funny though, because I've become this person that I never thought I would be. Like, I remember when I first started smoking weed, the movie Grandma's Boy, where he's like, I've got the bling, I've got the bling bling, I've got the Frankenstein shit, and I've got the deer shit. And he's like, just give me a bag of weed. I was that guy. I remember every time I'd have, dealers or plugs, whatever you want to call it, and I get the text message with like, this is the strain I have. I go, I don't know what that means. Just this one seems like a good price. Give me that one.
Right.
And then all of a sudden now, like I'll walk in here and I'm just, all right, what do you have that's this? Oh, I know that plant. I'm looking, I'm on my phone. Like, oh, I've never heard of that one. On Leafly, looking up the profile and everything else. I've become the person I hate.
Isn't it funny too when you walk into a dispo and you just, as soon as you walk in, you can smell that there's that one strain you've been missing is in there, and you're like, you guys have it today, don't you?
See, I'm at a handicap. I'm pretty sure I broke my nose in college and never got it fixed. So like my sense of smell is absolutely terrible. And I feel like everyone's like, oh, you smell these tones? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. I don't smell it. I'm jealous. I have friends of mine that can take like a dry pull of a joint and be like, oh, this is super silver haze. I'm like, this is a rolled joint. What do you mean it's super silver haze? How do you know that? But
I know a few folks who are that way. I think one of your colleagues is that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Former colleagues. Yeah. Eric, he's really good at that. My buddy Anthony is the one who really blew my mind doing that. He is I forget what he does, in new markets for Jeter or something along those lines. But he grew up here. He is my North Star when it comes to weed. But yeah, man, it is this interesting. This industry is really interesting. So now you've got the task of lighting up these 36 stores that you guys have, bringing the new menu. What excites you? We're about to go into 2024. What excites you about going into 2024 this year, except for the fact that you get to sit out of MJ BizCon?
I think, yeah, well, sitting out MJ BizCon is definitely a highlight of 2023 for me.
Yeah,
It's just, it's such a hectic experience.
it's too big. It's too big now.
Yeah, it is.
For an industry of people who have anxiety, it is too big.
But for me, I think it's, you know, having enough cultivation need to not only meet the existing demand, because I know that a lot of the patient population hasn't tried us, but we do sell almost everything that we make. But then to be able to have that biomass to get into being creative, you know, where can we take the regs with OMU to bring some other innovative things to Florida that may not have yet been applied to this marketplace? You know, what other direction can we take from our customers? And then also, once we hit that kind of critical mass of where, hey, cultivation is really at the comfortable size for the store footprint, how do we then decrease our overall cost of operating so we can deliver more value to the patient? Because I think that's what we've really not been good at communicating, is that our mission is to have relatively basic stores, relatively clean advertising, things that we're not spending a huge amount of money on our storefronts or our or you know, marketing, advertising, swag, those things, because instead we're taking that money and investing it back into giving the highest quality for the lowest price we can to the patient. And so, you know, how much further can we push that paradigm in trying to create additional value, and without necessarily facilitating a race to the bottom, but instead a race to highest quality at lowest price.
One of the nice things that I like about your stores is the mix of accessories that you guys have as well too. A lot of the stores that you go into, you really just kind of see the more expensive Puffco products, and like, don't get me wrong, they're phenomenal, but a Peak Pro is like 400, a Proxy's, you know, in the threes, and like that's not really obtainable to everybody. And you know, especially for someone who's never tried an e-rig or something before, that's a very high barrier to entry. Like I go through your store, you see products from Grab, and you have different price points. Like I think that's very important. How much do your bud tenders participate in like the education of accessories as well too?
As much as they can. I mean, it's everybody's been heartbroken by breaking a piece of glass, right?
Yes.
So I think that's why our bud tenders have had a huge amount of influence over the style of pieces that we have. Especially with a lot of the Grav products that have kind of lower center of gravity, wider bases, a bit tougher on the glass perspective, that they're able to get a very quality product, Grav product here for a really low price, because we're buying in the mass to support, you know, 70 dispensaries nationwide. So we can provide that at a lot lower price than say a head shop could, but also it's going to be something that one of our folks has actually, you know, in store has enjoyed. They know they can direct, here's some of the idiosyncrasies of like the draw off this one, or hey, you know what, maybe I wouldn't buy that one, the down stem's just a little too short, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, it's funny for that. I remember my first time I ever discovered vape pens. So when I first met my wife, her family didn't know that I smoked. I didn't have 250 fucking hours of me on the internet talking about it.
Right.
And my sister-in-law and brother-in-law were moving in with us for a short period of time while their house was being finished. I smoked literally inside on the couch every night. That was back when I had some power in my relationship. But you know, they also had a relatively newborn child, and I wasn't going to do that. And I bought a PAX 3, and I was told, oh, you do it very discreetly with this. So one night I pack up the PAX and I light it up and I take a hit, and my wife comes down. She goes, "Are you smoking here?" I'm like, what the hell? You're not supposed to be able to tell. And it didn't do what I needed it to. And I never realized, like, I just assumed, like, I talked to somebody at a head shop, like, yeah. Then my buddy brought me in. It was one of the first distillate pens I had ever seen. We were in his car. I took a hit of it, and I'm like, this thing's incredible. Yeah. That night I had like 3 of them, and then I didn't realize the crap I was buying back then. And I don't love those pens, but they are to me a necessary evil. But I say that to say, like, the education one, like, I spent $300 on a product that I ended up throwing out at some point.
And yeah, and that's I certainly think that in terms of hardware, that's a huge risk to take, especially in most shops where people are incentivized to to move inventory,
Yeah.
which is just the matter of fact. But I tell you, the one that really gives me the emotional quandary is disposable vapes. They're great, they're convenient, so many people enjoy them, but we're throwing so many batteries right back into the waste stream, So I'm certainly want to find some methodology of offering a recycling program or something, so that
That'd be pretty cool.
because we can decrease the environmental impact of the convenience factor.
Dude, I never even thought about that. I really that doesn't even cross my mind, because I like disposable vapes because they're super easy, convenient. I don't have to grab a cart, make sure I have my 510 battery on me. Or in most cases now people are doing, proprietary batteries. Like, I love 710, but that's another battery I have to buy for their
Right.
pods and everything else. And then, Steezy has a pod, and then there's the all these different ones. So the disposable one is good. The fact that you guys are looking into a recycling program is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think it fits with the Green Dragon name.
It does, we really try to take that, lessen the environmental impact as much as we can. We grow in a proprietary soil blend, which, as you know, is very unusual for an indoor grow.
You guys are doing soil, huh?
We're doing soil indoor.
Very cool.
Yep. And
that means flavor, folks.
so the only thing that we're disposing of once we compost that soil is a thin outer bag, which we're recycling as well. We're using as much recycled water as we can. Everything we can do to make sure that we are keeping with that kind of green legacy.
Good for you. My daughter just asked me if we can start recycling. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm 37. I've never recycled in my life. Really terrible person. Tom, we've been talking for an hour about everything and anything. What did we miss? What do we want to cover before I let you get back to work?
Man, I think the only thing we've missed is to schedule an update, so I can come back to you in a few months and say, hey, you know what? I told you we were working on expanding the footprint. I told you we were working on expanding the cultivation, and here's what we've done.
Well, I'm gonna have to get up to the cultivation next time.
Absolutely, let's do that.
I love cultivation tours. They're my favorite.
We got a big one up there.
I'm excited, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate you sitting down with me, and we'll do this again.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Todd.
Thank you to everybody at home. If you missed any part of this interview, you can always check it out at youtube.com/elevateyourgrind. For all things C-Lab, www.joinclab.com, or just search Cannabis Lab on Eventbrite. It's another episode of Elevate Your Grind. We'll see you next time. Cool. Easy enough.
Yeah.